We've come to a strange place. Our intentions were to recover ancient artifacts, but something evil lurks here. We've been here some time now, and our reinforcements never came. We are trapped here. Our numbers dwindle as we prepare for our last stand. They will come at night. I need to remember the words. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The force shall free me. It will be dark soon.
Hello there, I'm Cooosh. Well, here we are, gamers, back at it for another guide. This time, I'll be showing you Madness, a 30-meter damage over time spec that will consume your enemies. Now, I approach this guide from the perspective of a beginner, but with that being said, there could be something for someone to learn regardless of skill level. I broke this guide up into 6 chapters, so if you were looking for something specific, feel free to skip ahead. Now, without further ado, let me show you the way of the Madness Sorcerer. Welcome to Chapter 1, where we're going to be talking about our gear. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire gearing process of how to hit each and every one of these specifically, but I will put my 7.4 DPS gearing guide in the description below. In that video, I go into much greater detail on how to hit these numbers. I do want to give a quick disclaimer though. In my 7.4 gearing guide, I don't specifically cover Madness, but you can follow my recommendations for a 1.4 GCD to hit the numbers I am running. My Madness gear numbers are the same as my Power Tech and my Marauder numbers. Now the numbers we are looking for specifically are right here. For our accuracy, we want to hit 110%. Now this won't be 110% exactly, but it's as close as we can get. And to hit this threshold, we will need 3 gear pieces and 4 gold augments and our stim. When we have those gear pieces, the number we will hit is 2704. For alacrity, we'll be running a 1.4 GCD. We will need 3 gear pieces and 2 gold augs. The number we will hit with these is 2154. And last but not least is our crit. With everything left, we will have 4 crit gear pieces and 8 gold augs. And our critical number will be 3765. In terms of our legendaries, the first one we will be rocking is the Gathering Storm package. Force Speed makes your next direct force attack deal 20% more damage, and force attacks deal 20% more damage while Polarity Shift is active. This legendary will count as one of our alacrity pieces. Our other legendary is Unmatched Haste package. The duration of Polarity Shift is increased by 5 seconds, and using Force Speed reduces the active cooldown of Polarity Shift by 5 seconds. And this will count as one of our critical pieces. As a Madness Sorcerer, we will have 2 tacticals, a single target tactical and an AoE tactical. Here is Tempest of Ro. Lightning Strike and Overloaded Strike has a 100% chance, and Force Lightning has a 50% chance to cause Creeping Terror to tick an additional time whenever they deal damage. Does not trigger additional healing. For our AoE tactical Killing Field, demolish hits all nearby targets affected by your death mark. Now in Chapter 3, Ability Interactions, I will talk about how to put death marks on our target. Now because we are running a 1.4 GCD, our relics will be the Mastery Relic and the Power Relic. Now during this guide, these will proc from time to time on our buff bar, and these are what those procs will look like. Welcome to Chapter 2, where we're going to be talking about our abilities. In this chapter, we will focus on our damage abilities, our cooldowns, and our utility abilities. Our first damage dealer I want to talk about is one that we're probably never ever going to use, and that is our basic attack, Saber Strike. It has a 4-meter range, deals X weapon damage spread across a flurry of 3 melee attacks. Next up is our first dot, Creeping Terror. This will cost us 18 force and has a 30-meter range. Paralyzes the target in fear, dealing X internal damage over 18 seconds and immobilizing it for 2 seconds. The immobilizing effect cannot occur more than once every 9 seconds. Our second dot is Affliction. This will cost us 32 force and has a 30-meter range. Cast a powerful force affliction upon the target that deals X internal damage over 18 seconds. Our next ability is an activated ability called Demolish. It'll cost us 27 force, has a 14-second cooldown, and a range of 30 meters. Crushes the target with devastating force, dealing X kinetic damage initially, plus an additional X kinetic damage over 9 seconds. The target also becomes vulnerable for 45 seconds, increasing the damage taken from force attacks by 5%. This ability will replace Crushing Darkness. Next up is Force Leech. This is an activated ability. It'll cost us 45 force, has 11.2 second cooldown, and a range of 30 meters. Steals life from an enemy, dealing X internal damage to the target and healing you for 50% of the damage dealt. Force Leech deals 30% more damage when used on a target affected by your affliction. That'll lead us to Deathfield. Deathfield will cost us 45 force, has a cooldown of 14 seconds, and a range of 30 meters. Creates a death field at the target location, dealing X internal damage and stealing life from affected targets to heal you for 10% of the damage dealt. Strikes up to 8 targets within a 5-meter radius. Next up is a channeled ability called Force Lightning. Has a 30-meter range. Deals X energy damage to the target and consumes 40 force over the duration of the channel. Also, slows the movement speed of the target by 50% and immobilizes weak and standard enemies. Dealing damage with Force Lightning produces a stack of Wrath. At 4 stacks, Wrath causes your next lightning strike, Crushing Darkness, or Demolish to activate instantly, consumes 50% less force, and deals 25% more damage. Lightning Strike is an activated ability, will cost us 36 force, and has a 30-meter range. Fires a charge of lightning at the target, deals X energy damage. Then we have Shock. Shock will cost us 36 force, has a cooldown of 5.6 seconds, and a 30-meter range. Shocks the target for X energy damage. Standard and weak targets are additionally stunned for 3 seconds. Last up is our AoE ability, Force Storm. This is a channeled ability and has a 30-meter range. Calls down a Force Storm over the target area, consuming 60 force and dealing X energy damage to up to 8 targets within 8 meters over the duration of the channel. Standard and weak targets have a 33% chance to be stunned by the storm each second. Next up is our cooldown abilities, and I'm going to start us off with Force Barrier. Force Barrier has an 8-second channel and a cooldown of 3 minutes. Channels a protective barrier around you, granting immunity to all negative, controlling, and damaging effects, and building up to 4 charges for Enduring Bastion, which absorbs X damage per charge and grants immunity to interrupts for up to 5 seconds after the channel ends. This ability does not respect the global cooldown and can be used while controlled. Next up on our list of cooldowns is Polarity Shift. Right now, because of my alacrity, my cooldown is 1 minute and 51.7 seconds. Your connection to the force shifts, granting 20% alacrity and immunity to pushback and interrupts for 15 seconds. Up next, I'm going to talk about our force speed. Now, normally, I would save this for our utility ability section, but because of our legendaries, force speed is also a cooldown. Force Speed has a 20-second cooldown, and Force Speed increases movement speed by 150% for 2 seconds. Does not break stealth. Now, a passive that goes hand in hand with Force Barrier, Polarity Shift, and Force Speed is in our talent tree. At level 64, we have the option to take Surging Speed. Reduces the cooldowns of Force Speed by 5 seconds and Force Barrier by 30 seconds. In addition, Force Speed lasts 0.5 seconds longer. Polarity Shift increases your movement speed by 100% while active. And the active cooldown of Force Speed is finished when Force Barrier ends. Next up is Recklessness. Right now, my cooldown is 1 minute and 23.8 seconds. Grants 2 charges of Recklessness, which increases the force critical chance of your direct attacks and heals by 60%. Each time a direct force ability critically hits, or each time a channeled force ability is activated, 1 charge is consumed. Lasts 20 seconds. Next, we have Static Barrier. It'll cost us 41 force and has a 30-meter range. Surrounds the target in a lightning shield that lasts up to 30 seconds and absorbs X damage. The target becomes deionized and cannot benefit from Static Barrier again for 20 seconds. Your static barrier heals you for 1% of your total health every second for as long as it lasts. In our talent tree, at level 51, we have the option to take the passive Lightning Barrier. Your static barrier crackles with electricity, shocking attackers for X energy damage when it absorbs direct damage to you. This effect does not affect static barriers placed on allies and cannot occur more than once each second. Next, we have Unnatural Preservation. This has a cooldown of 30 seconds. Immediately restores X health to you. Cannot be used on others. In our talent tree, at level 64, we have the option to take Unnatural Vigor. Unnatural Preservation increases your damage reduction by 15% for 6 seconds. Additionally, reduces the cooldown of Unnatural Preservation by 5 seconds. For our next cooldown, in our talent tree, at level 43, we have the option to take Cloud Mine. Cloud Mine has a 45-second cooldown, wipes your enemy's thoughts, instantly lowering your threat by a moderate amount, and increases your damage reduction by 25% for 6 seconds. So this is basically our threat drop with 25% DR attached to it. Back at our talent tree, at level 43 again, we have the option to take Unlimited Power. Unlimited Power is our raid buff. It'll cost us 45 force and has a 5-minute cooldown. Increases mastery, endurance, and presence for you and your operation group members within 40 meters by 10%. Last 10 seconds. Those affected by unlimited power become drained and cannot regain unlimited power for 5 minutes. So basically what this means is if there's multiple Sorks in the group, this raid buff can only be activated once every 5 minutes. Now, because we're running a 1.4 GCD, we're going to be using the Power Adrenal. Our Adrenal has a 3-minute cooldown, increases power by 1005, and reduces all healing done by 20%, lasts 15 seconds. And last but not least is our Med Pack. We pop this, we heal, and then we also heal a little bit over time for 15 seconds. This can only be used once per fight, unless you die and are rezzed, you can use it again. Now we're going to be talking about our utility abilities. And to start us off, let's go to our talent tree. At level 68, we have the option to take Phase Walk. Phase Walk has a 0.50 second activation and a cooldown of 1.5 seconds. Activating this ability marks your current location for 10 minutes. When this ability is activated again, if you are within 60 meters of the marked location, you instantly return to the marked location. Phase Walk goes on cooldown for 60 seconds when used to return to the marked location. So let's take a peek at Phase Walk here. We're going to run over here to our ship. Let's plop Phase Walk down, let's run away, and then when we activate Phase Walk again, we are back. And then it goes on cooldown for 60 seconds. Our next utility ability is Extrication, aka our Force Pull. This will cost us 27 force. My cooldown right now is 55.8 seconds, and it has a range of 30 meters. Lowers the target's threat by a moderate amount, and if the target is a group member, pulls the target to your location. Our next utility ability is our Single Target Stun Electrocute. This will cost us 9 force. My current cooldown is 55.8 seconds and has a 10-meter range. Electrocutes the target, dealing X energy damage and stunning it for 4 seconds. Now in our talent tree, at level 68, we have the option to take Whirlwind. Whirlwind will cost us 9 force. My current cooldown is 55.8 seconds and has a 30-meter range. Traps the target in a whirlwind for 60 seconds. Non-player, non-standard, and non-weak targets heal rapidly while trapped. Damage causes this effect to end prematurely. Next, I want to talk about our Overload, aka our AoE, Knockback, and Root. This will cost us 9 force, and right now my cooldown is 18.6 seconds. Deals X energy damage and knocks back up to 8 enemies within a 15-meter cone in front of you, binding them in electricity and immobilizing them for 5 seconds. Standard and weak enemies are additionally knocked down for 3 seconds. Direct damage dealt after 2 seconds ends the immobilize effect prematurely. Next is our Cleanse Expunge. This will cost us 14 force, 11.2 second cooldown, and a range of 30 meters. Cleanses a friendly target of up to 2 negative mental or force effects. You can also use this on yourself. One of our healing abilities that I think is just important to know is Dark Heal. This is an activated ability, will cost us 63 force, and has a range of 30 meters. Heals a friendly target for X health. Another healing ability that we have in our kit is Resurgence. This will cost us 45 force, 5.6 second cooldown, and a range of 30 meters. Immediately heals the target for X, plus an additional X over 9 seconds. Consuming Darkness. Consumes the dark energy around you, restoring 40 force. Utilizing Consuming Darkness makes you weary, reducing your force regeneration rate by 2 for 10 seconds. This effect can stack up to 4 times. So you may have guessed it, but our primary resource is force. As a Madness Sorcerer, we will have 600 force available to us. So our flat force generation, with no buffs or anything of the sort attached, will be roughly 8 to 9 force per second. Realistically, you shouldn't run into many force problems on this spec. But Consuming Darkness is there if you need that instant 40 force regeneration. Now with that being said, I will showcase Consuming Darkness. I'm going to spam some lightning strikes to get our force down. So now with our force down, we can see here that we are generating 9 force per second. And then if we activate Consuming Darkness, boom, there's 40. So here we are with our normal force regen. I'm going to have 1 stack of Weary, then we can see our force regeneration has been reduced. 2 stacks, it is reduced further. 3 stacks, it is reduced even further. At 3 stacks, it appears we're getting 2 to 3 force per second. At 4 stacks, we will not be gaining any force. I do want a disclaimer. We do have passives and abilities that will regain us force passively. But just flat and unbuffed 4 stacks of Weary will prevent us from regenning any force per second. Now, I know I just rambled a lot there, so let's do a quick recap. Our flat force regen will be at about 8 to 9 force per second, and that's with no buffs, passives, or abilities. Now say we utilize Consuming Darkness. At 1 stack, our force generation will be 6 to 7 force per second. At 2 stacks, this will be 4 to 5 force per second. At 3 stacks, about 2 to 3 force per second, and at 4 stacks, we will be generating 0 force per second. But that will not apply to abilities and passives that will let us build force. I'm only referring to our natural force regeneration here. Welcome to Chapter 3, where we're going to be talking about our ability interactions. I just want to give a friendly reminder that throughout this chapter, our relics will be proccing, and this is what those procs will look like. Now this chapter has a lot of passives I want to go over as well, so let's get right into it. So first off, I want to talk about our dots. A quick recap. Demolish will put a dot on the target, Creeping Terror is one of our dots, and Affliction is one of our dots. If we remember on the Demolish tooltip, when Demolish is applied to a target, it will make the target vulnerable. So I'm going to cast Demolish here. We will see the Demolish dot on the target, and we will see the vulnerable debuff. Damage increased from force attacks. Let's put Demolish back on the target. Let's throw out our Creeping Terror and our Affliction. Now on our buff bar, the first passive I want to talk about here is Corrupted Defense. In our talent tree, at level 43, we have the option to take the passive Corrupted Defense. Dealing critical damage with your damage over time abilities increases your damage reduction by 5% for 10 seconds. Stacks up to 3 times. So if we get Demolish on the target, Demolish can build our stacks, Creeping Terror can build our stacks, and Affliction can build our stacks. The most stacks we can get is 3, and our dots has a chance to refresh this. And we can see that here. So we went over our main 3 dots. Now let's talk about the ability Death Field. Death Field is an interesting one because when you hit it, you get this little AoE icon. So technically, you don't need to have a target selected for Death Field, and we can see that here. We'll click Death Field, activate it on the Operation Training Dummy. So there are 2 ways to cast Death Field. One, I will showcase again, where we click on the ability, and then we plop it where we want it. Another way to cast Death Field is if you hit the bind twice, it'll cast it on your current target. And we can see that here. Now the debuff I want to talk about first is right here, and it's called Death Mark. In our talent tree, at level 23, we get the passive Death Mark. Deathfield places a death mark on affected targets, increasing the amount of damage the targets suffer from your next 15 periodic damaging abilities by 15%. Lasts 30 seconds. So let's put Demolish on our target for the dot. Let's put Creeping Terror. Let's put Affliction. And let's activate Deathfield. Now, as our dots tick, we can see our death marks ticking down. Now, if you're thinking, our death marks aren't always ticking down there. What's up with that? At level 23, we have the option to take the passive Unrelenting Affliction. When a death mark is consumed, there is a 50% chance for a death mark to not be consumed. So that's why every time our dots tick, sometimes we don't lose a death mark. Still in our talent tree, at level 39, we have the option to take the passive Downfall. Dealing damage with Creeping Terror consumes 2 death marks, increasing the damage of Creeping Terror. So we get a pretty nice combo going with our dots on the target, then we Deathfield for death marks, and then we have our passives Unrelenting Affliction and Downfall working side by side. I want to showcase this one more time because now we've talked about death marks, Unrelenting Affliction, and Downfall. So let's put our main 3 dots on the target, Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, and let's hit our Deathfield. Now if we take a peek here, we'll notice that we're not always losing death marks because of those passives. While we're on the topic of our dots and death marks, I want to take this moment to talk about a passive we get at level 68, Creeping Death. Increases the damage dealt by periodic effects by 15% on targets below 30% of max health. In addition, Force Leech restores 15 force when used on a target affected by your death mark. Let's see Creeping Death here. Let's activate our Deathfield to get our death marks on the target, and then we will Force Leech. We got healed. You guessed it, still in our talent tree. At level 35, we get the passive Dark Echo. Targets hit by Deathfield have a 50% chance to emit a Dark Echo, damaging itself in up to 7 targets within 5 meters for X internal damage. This second block of text that talks about Deathbrand will not apply to us. There is an option in our talent tree to replace Deathfield with Deathbrand, but we will not be doing that. So disregard the second block of text. Let's see Dark Echo here. I'm going to activate Deathfield on the target. That was our tick of Dark Echo. Let's see it again. There was only 1 tick because Dark Echo did not proc. I'm going to activate Deathfield again. And there is one other debuff that we can notice here, Overwhelmed. In our talent tree, at level 43, we get the passive Pestilence. Damaging targets affected by Affliction and Creeping Terror with Deathfield spreads them to unaffected targets in the area of effect. Deathfield applies Overwhelmed to targets it hits, increasing area attack damage they take by 10%. The bottom line of text here will not apply to us again because it's only on Deathbrand. Here we are off-site to see our Pestilence passive in action. So this elite on my left is going to be my dot spread target. And what I mean by that is I'm going to put my dots on this target and then Deathfield off of that target to spread it to the others. Now Deathfield will spread our Creeping Terror, our Affliction, and will apply death marks to every target it hits. So let's see it in action. Creeping Terror, Affliction, and then Deathfield. So every target hit, got our dots and our death marks. If you remember in Chapter 1, we had an AoE tactical, Killing Field. I'm going to equip this tactical, and a friendly reminder, demolish hits all nearby targets affected by your death mark. I'm going to put both dots on this right target, then Deathfield to hit the target on the left. Then when I demolish, it'll be applied to both targets. Creeping Terror, Affliction, there's our Deathfield. Now when I cast Demolish, it'll hit both targets. So let's go back to our talent tree. At level 73, we get the passive Parasitism. Increases the life stolen by Deathfield, Deathbrand, and Force Leech by 100%, and causes Affliction and Creeping Terror to steal life from enemy targets, healing you for 10% of the damage they deal. Let's see one more dot spread, but this time I'm on hardcast Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, and then a Deathfield. Now again, Demolish does not transfer over, just our Creeping Terror and our Affliction. Now on our buff bar, the next passive I want to talk about is right here. In our talent tree, at level 51, we get the passive Disintegration. Increases the critical chance of Force Leech and Lightning Strike by 15%. Increases all periodic damage dealt by 20%. In addition, Death Field and Death Brand grant Vitiate's Malice, causing your Force Lightning to heal you for 15% of the damage dealt over 12 seconds. Let's see Disintegration in action here. I'm going to use my Death Field. There is our proc. Now when we Force Lightning, we will heal. Now you may have noticed we build 2 buffs here. The first one we're going to talk about is Wrath. In our talent tree, if we go to our Abilities tab and search for Wrath, we can see the passive here. Dealing damage with Force Lightning produces a stack of Wrath. At 4 stacks, Wrath causes your next Lightning Strike, Crushing Darkness, or Demolish to activate instantly. Consumes 50% less force and deals 25% more damage. So let's activate our Force Lightning to build our stacks of Wrath. 1 full channel of Force Lightning will build us 4 stacks. Instant Demolish. Force Lightning. Back to 4 stacks. Instant Lightning Strike. Next, I want to talk about our 4 stacks of Fulminating Current. In our talent tree, at level 78, we get the passive Fulminating Current. Dealing damage with Force Lightning increases the critical chance of your damaging periodic defects by 3% for 10 seconds. Stacks up to 4 times. So let's put our dots on the target, ... and Force Lightning to increase that crit chance. Back in our talent tree again for another passive. At level 60, we get the passive Lightning Burns. Damage dealt by Force Lightning has a 20% chance, and damage dealt by Force Leech has a 60% chance to restore 2 force and deal X energy damage to the target. Increases the duration of Crushing Darkness and Demolish by 3 seconds. In our talent tree, at level 27, we have the option to take Plague Master. Shock finishes off all your directly applied damage over time effects at once, dealing the remaining damage. The cooldown for Shock is increased by 12 seconds. Now, I do want a disclaimer. Because Plague Master will finish off all of our dots, there's technically 2 ways to play this spec. I will elaborate further in Chapter 5 when I go over the opener and rotations. Let's see Plague Master here. We'll put Demolish on the target, then Creeping Terror, then Affliction, and then Shock for the kaboom. There's one more passive I want to bring up just because I think it's important. At level 15, we get the passive Madness. Force Lightning no longer has a cooldown. Force Lightning channels and ticks 33% faster, but deals 20% less damage. In addition, your Resurgence increases your armor rating by 30% while it heals you. If we go to our character panel, under the Gear tab, we can select Details. Once in Details, if you scroll down a little bit, we can see our armor rating. Now I'm going to activate Resurgence, and we can see our armor rating increase here. So now that we've covered our most important ability interactions and passives, I want to loop back to one of our legendaries, Gathering Storm Package. Quick refresher, Force Speed makes your next direct force attack deal 20% more damage, and force attacks deal 20% more damage while Polarity Shift is active. So we'll notice here, when we activate Force Speed, we will see a buff. Galvanized. Your next force attack deals more damage. Now I'm going to activate Force Leech. The buff goes away and kaboom. I also want to talk about our tactical one more time, Tempest of Ro. For a quick little recap, Lightning Strike and Overloaded Strike has a 100% chance, and Force Lightning has a 50% chance to cause Creeping Terror to tick an additional time whenever they deal damage. Does not trigger additional healing. So let's put Creeping Terror on our target. It'll periodically tick damage. Lightning Strike will 100% cause it to tick again. Lightning Strike, extra Creeping Terror tick. Lightning Strike, extra Creeping Terror tick. Now again, our tactical will allow Lightning Strike to 100% tick Creeping Terror an additional time. Force Lightning has a 50% chance of ticking Creeping Terror an additional time. But if we remember our Wrath passive, Force Lightning will build 4 stacks of Wrath, allowing us to cast Lightning Strike instantly. So Creeping Terror on the target, Force Lightning, and then boom, instant lightning strike with an additional creeping terror tick. Next, I want to talk about our other legendary, the Unmatched Haste package. As a reminder, the duration of Polarity Shift is increased by 5 seconds, and using Force Speed reduces the active cooldown of Polarity Shift by 5 seconds. I'm going to activate our Polarity Shift here, and then when we activate our Force Speed, boom, down 5 seconds. Another cooldown reduction we can get comes in the form of a passive at level 27. We have the choice to take Critical Movement. Periodic damage reduces the cooldown of Force Speed by 3 seconds. This effect can only occur once every 5 seconds. I'm going to activate Force Speed and then put our dots on the target. And we can see our reduction here. I want to do a quick recap because I know I've been throwing a lot of passives at you. If there's one thing you take from this chapter, remember that we'll Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, and then Death Field. When we activate Death Field, it'll give our target stacks of death marks. Those death marks will increase the periodic damage when consumed. And then our passive Unrelenting Affliction will make it so there's a 50% chance death marks aren't consumed. And then the passive Downfall will allow Creeping Terror to consume 2 death marks and increase its damage. And because of other passives, we will be generating Force and Health. Welcome to Chapter 4, the Talent Tree. Now, I'm covering things that I thought were the most important in terms of passives and abilities, but I do recommend going through and reading the tooltips just in case I overlook something. With that being said, I will be doing 2 talent trees, one for non-Plague Master and one for Plague Master. So this first tree, here is what I'm running most of the time for my non-Plague Master talent tree. At level 15, we get our Static Barrier and our Death Field. Level 23, I'm always taking Unrelenting Affliction. Level 27, we're going to be taking Critical Movement. Level 35, we get our Creeping Terror. At level 39, I always take Downfall. Level 43, most of the time I'm taking Corrupted Defense. Say I'm parsing on a dummy or a raid buff is needed, we could take our raid buff Unlimited Power. Say you do need a little extra DR, you can also take Cloud Mind. At level 47, we get our Force Leech. At level 51, if we're able to utilize our Lightning Barrier damage, I will take that. If not, Defiance is a good option. Defiance is a passive, increases damage reduction by 3%. At level 60, we get our Demolish. Level 64, I'm usually taking Surging Speed, but say I need a little extra DR, Unnatural Vigor is an option. At level 68, I'm usually taking Phase Walk. Now the 2 options we have at level 73, the first one is Corrupted Flesh. This is a passive, reduces the damage taken from all periodic effects by 15%. The other option is Immersion. This is also a passive. Force Speed grants Immersion, removing all movement impairing effects and granting immunity to them for the duration. So for my non-Plague Master talent tree, 99.9% of the time, this is what I'm rocking. Now very similar to the non-Plague Master rotation, at level 27 we get our Plague Master. And everything else will pretty much be a case-by-case basis. At level 43, we can take our raid buff if we need. We can take Cloud Mine for more DR. For 51, if I can utilize Lightning Barrier again, I'm taking that. If not, Defiance. Same thing at level 64 and 68 and 73. Same as the others, just kind of depends on what you need. But 99.9% of the time, this is what I'm taking for my Plague Master talent tree. Well, here we are at last, gamers. Chapter 5, the opener and rotation. Now, I'm going to be teaching you 2 of each. 2 openers, 2 rotations. The first opener and rotation I'm going to take you through will not be utilizing the Plague Master passive. How this is going to work, we're going to start with a hard-casted Demolish. After Demolish, we are going to Creeping Terror, then Affliction. After that Affliction, it's time for our fun buttons. First, we want to use Polarity and then Force Speed. The reason we want to use Polarity Shift into Force Speed is because of our Unmatched Haste legendary. When we activate Force Speed, we will get a 5-second cooldown reduction on Polarity. Then we will use Recklessness into our Adrenal, into our Death Field. Then we are going to cast Force Leech, then Force Lightning. Force Lightning will be building us those 4 stacks of Wrath. So our next ability will be an instant cast Lightning Strike. Then another Force Lightning, then another instant cast Lightning Strike, then Force Lightning, and then an instant cast Demolish. And that's where we're going to end the opener. So let's see our opener nice and slow. First we are going to Demolish, and then Creeping Terror, Affliction. We're going to pop Polarity Shift, Force Speed, Recklessness, then our Adrenal, onto Death Field, Force Leech, Force Lightning, instant cast Lightning Strike, Force Lightning, instant cast Lightning Strike, and then we're going to do 2 Force Lightnings, 1, 2, and then our instant cast Demolish. Let's see it again, nice and slow. Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Polarity Shift, Force Speed, Recklessness, Adrenal into Death Field. And we have a Force Leech, Force Lightning, instant cast Lightning Strike, Force Lightning, instant cast Lightning Strike, and then Force Lightning, and then our instant Demolish. Let's see our opener again, but this time I'm going to go a little faster. We got our hard cast Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Polarity, Force Speed, Recklessness, Adrenal, Death Field into Force Leech. Then we have Force Lightning, a Lightning Strike, Force Lightning, a Lightning Strike. Then we have 2 Force Lightnings, 1, 2, and Demolish. Now let's do a full speed opener, but this time I'm going to have the abilities already up, and I'm not going to say a word. Let's see our opener in a boss fight. For this example, we'll be using the world boss on Kessen's Landing.
Attention all prospective allies. Please avoid touching the fire. It is very hot. Our forces believe in peace. Do not resist.
Now that we've seen our opener, hopefully we have a good understanding about how that works. Now let's talk about our rotation. So this is where our opener ended, at this Demolish. So I'm going to bring the rotation up on the screen now, just so we can see the whole picture. So once our opener's done with that Demolish, we're then going to have to reapply our dots with the Creeping Terror and Affliction. Then we're going to Death Field, Force Leech, Force Lightning into a Lightning Strike, and then Force Lightning, and then we're right back at the beginning with the Demolish. Now if you're thinking, why aren't we Force Lightning, Lightning Strike, Force Lightning, Lightning Strike, Demolish? Well, that's because if we remember, Force Lightning will be building those 4 stacks of Wrath. So if we used a Lightning Strike in that last spot, we would be using our 4 stacks of Wrath, therefore our Demolish wouldn't be an instant cast. So that's why the last 2 abilities in our rotation are going to be Force Lightning, so our Demolish can be instant cast. Now the one cooldown that we'll be using throughout the rotation is Force Speed. A good rule of thumb I like to live by is if it's going to be hitting 1 target, I'm going to Force Speed on Force Leech. If I'm going to be hitting 2 or more targets, then I'll Force Speed on Death Field. Now, in terms of our other cooldowns coming off cooldown during our rotation, Polarity Shift will give us that 20% alacrity and 20% flat damage boost, so I like to use that on Demolish. For Recklessness, I like to use it on Death Field, because we'll have those 2 Recklessness charges that are on our hardest hitting abilities. The same will go for Adrenal. If Adrenal's back up, I'm going to be hitting it right as I hit Death Field. Let's see a seamless transition from our opener into our rotation. Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, fun buttons into Death Field, Force Leech, Force Lightning, Instant Strike, Force Lightning, another Instant Strike, and then 2 Force Lightnings, and then we'll start our rotation with this Demolish, and then Creeping Terror, Affliction, Death Field, Force Leech with Force Speed, Force Lightning, Strike, Force Lightning, Demolish, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Death Field, Force Speed, Force Leech. We can repeat this for all eternity. Now it's time for the Plague Master. So the previous rotation is more of just like a standard easy peasy rotation. This one is a little bit more advanced, but does do a lot more damage. So with the Plague Master passive selected at level 27 in our tree, this is going to be our opener. First thing we're going to do is start with a Force Speed on a Force Leech. After the Leech, we are going to use Death Field. We are then going to apply Creeping Terror, then Force Lightning, then we are going to apply our Affliction. After that Affliction, we're going to pop our Adrenal and Polarity and use Shock. Now, because we're Plague Master in this one, that Shock is going to detonate our dots, and then we will have to reapply them. So at the Shock, we will do Creeping Terror, Affliction, and then an instant cast Demolish. Now, this Demolish will be able to be instant casted because of that Force Lightning we did earlier. Next, we will Force Lightning, and then we will do an instant cast Lightning Strike. Then we will pop Recklessness onto Death Field. And that's where I'm going to end this opener for now. So I'm going to do the opener nice and slow here. Force Speed into Force Leech. Then Death Field. Creeping Terror. Full casted Force Lightning. Affliction. Polarity. Adrenal Shock. Then Creeping Terror. Affliction. Demolish. Force Lightning into Strike. And then Recklessness and Death Field. Alrighty, let's see the opener again. I'm going to go a little faster this time, but still pretty slow. Force Speed into Force Leech. And then Death Field. Creeping Terror. Force Lightning. Affliction. Polarity. Adrenal Shock. We're going to reapply our dots with Creeping Terror. Affliction. Demolish. Force Lightning. Strike. And then Recklessness into our Death Field. Let's see the opener again, but this time I'm going to go a little faster. Force Speed into Force Leech, and then Death Field, Creeping Terror, Force Lightning, Affliction, Polarity, Adrenal Shock, and then Creeping Terror, Affliction, Demolish, Force Lightning, Strike, and then a Recklessness into Death Field. Easy peasy. Here's our opener again, but this time I'm going to have the abilities already up, and I am not going to say a word. Now let's see our Plague Master opener in a boss fight. For this example, we're using good old Nimnefra.
She will collect her toll in blood. She does not fear you, only us.
So hopefully at this point we have a good understanding of the opener for Plague Master. Now let's talk about our Plague Master rotation. So this was our opener, and this Death Field right here, that's where our opener ended. I'm going to bring up our rotation now. So after that Death Field, this is where we'll start our rotation. The first GCD in our rotation will be Force Leech. I like to use Force Speed into Force Leech for the most part. If there are 2 or more targets, it's totally okay to use Force Speed on your Death Field at the end of the rotation. So our rotation will be as follows. Force Leech, Force Lightning, then we will apply our dots with Creeping Terror and Affliction. That Shock will detonate all of our dot damage, so after Shock we will need to reapply them. Creeping Terror, Affliction, and then Demolish. Now this Demolish will be instant casted because we did Force Lightning earlier in our rotation. After that Demolish, we will do a Force Lightning into an instant cast Lightning Strike, and then finally a Death Field. Now, in terms of Force Speed, Polarity Shift, Recklessness, and Adrenal, again, Force Speed into Force Leech, unless there are 2 or more targets, then on Death Field. For your Polarity Shift and Adrenal, use those on your Shock. And then for recklessness, I like to pop that on Death Field, so my 2 critical charges will be used on Death Field and Force Leech. So now that we've talked about our rotation, let's see a seamless transition between our opener into our rotation. Let's start our opener with a good old Force Speed into Force Leech, then Death Field, Creeping Terror, Force Lightning, Affliction, then we'll do Polarity Adrenal Shock, reapply our dodge, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Demolish, Force Lightning into Strike. Then we're going to Reckless this on Death Field and Force Speed into Force Leech. Then Force Lightning, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Shock, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Demolish, Force Lightning, Strike, Death Field, Force Speed, Force Leech, Force Lightning, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Shock, Creeping Terror, Affliction, Demolish, Force Lightning, Strike, Death Field, and we can repeat this forever. Now I want to go back to our talent tree real quick and talk about Surging Speed. This is the text we're going to focus on here. And the active cooldown of Force Speed is finished when Force Barrier ends. So with Surging Speed in mind, let's also look one more time at our legendary Gathering Storm package. Force Speed makes your next direct force attack deal 20% more damage, and force attacks deal 20% more damage while Polarity Shift is active. So between our Surging Speed passive and our Gathering Storm package legendary, we can use Force Speed on Death Field, pop our Force Barrier, break our Force Barrier. Then because of Surging Speed, we will be able to pop Force Speed into our Force Leech. So now that we've gone over the pieces, I want to bring up our opener and our rotation. Here is our opener, here is our rotation. So when we pop our Polarity on this shock here, not only will we have that 20% alacrity increase, we will also have a flat 20% damage increase because of Gathering Storm package. So at the end of our opener, when we're going to be popping this Death Field into our Force Leech to start our rotation, on that Death Field, we can Force Speed, Death Field, Barrier, break the barrier to reset the cooldown of our Force Speed. Then we will have another Force Speed for that Force Leech. So I'm going to showcase this here nice and slow. I'm going to pop our Force Speed into Death Field. Then when we use our Force Barrier, we can move to break it. Then our cooldown of Force Speed is reset, so we can use it on Force Leech. I'm going to show this example one more time, but this time I'm going to go full speed. The last thing I want to cover in this chapter is our AoE tactical killing field. I showed an example of this tactical in chapter 3, but there's a couple more things I wanted to add. As a friendly reminder, Demolish hits all nearby targets affected by your Death Mark. And if we remember, Death Mark is a passive we get at level 23. And another friendly reminder, because this is an important one. Death Field places a Death Mark on affected targets, increasing the amount of damage the targets suffer from your next 15 periodic damaging abilities by 15%. Lasts 30 seconds. Now the madness expert I have helping me out behind the scenes is my good buddy Cliff. And what he recommended for an AoE setup would be to put both of your dots on the target, then use all your fun buttons, and then Death Field into Demolish. And then he said after that, you can kind of just go back to the standard rotation, but you just want to make sure that you are using Death Field before your Demolish. But he did also mention that if you're in a fight where you're actually just doing pure AoE, it's better to just get your dots on the target, Death Field for the death marks on the targets, then Demolish, and then just spam your Force Storm, rather than just going to a rotation. He also did recommend not using Plague Master if you are going into like an AoE heavy fight. So with all that being said, I would only run this tactical on AoE heavy fights, or to even help clear trash faster. For example, the hallway trash leading up to Knopf. Ugh. Welcome to Chapter 6, Final Thoughts. Now I like to keep Chapter 6 short and sweet and just kind of ramble a little bit and also mention a couple things I may have forgotten about here or there, or just some things I didn't really necessarily have a place for. Madness has definitely grown on me over the span of me working on this guide, and playing Plague Master has been a lot of fun. Now say you're going for that top Plague Master parse on the dummy. One thing you can do is take your unlimited power raid buff and pop it on your Force Leech at the beginning of your opener. I personally haven't taken the raid buff on any boss fights, but parsing on a dummy is a different story. So if you want that little extra damage boost, there you go. Another thing I wanted to mention is with the standard rotation. We do Force Lightning, Instant Cast Lightning Strike, Force Lightning, Force Lightning. Another alternative to that is you can really just do 4 Force Lightnings if you want, or if you're under polarity, it'll just be 5 Force Lightnings. I definitely recommend using Lightning Strike, but I just wanted to mention that technically, there is another way to play that rotation. I really do like the mobility of this spec, but my biggest problem is force speed. And what I mean by that, I'm so used to playing Sin Tank and using force speed when I need my speed, so using force speed as an offensive cooldown to increase my damage just feels awkward to me. Also, the Plague Master rotation is force negative, meaning you will eventually run out of force, but it takes a while, so I don't necessarily worry about it. But at the end of the day, if you find yourself falling out of the rotation and everything's going crazy in the raid, just remain calm and death field. Well, that's the guide. I hope I was able to get you started on your Madness journey. In my opinion, Madness has solid damage and brings good utility for the raid. I wanted to give a special thanks to Cliff for all the work he did again helping me behind the scenes. I asked if he had any advice for future Madness players out there, and he did not disappoint. I will now close with his advice.
Use Unnatural Preservation liberally. It's a free instant defensive that helps your healers out.